I'm going to bring the redistricting board meeting to order. My name is Rich Johnson. I'm the chair. We're going to do roll call. To my left.
Matt Bergen.
Pat Richardson.
To my right.
Paul Thompson.
Zoom person.
Lance Johnson.
Okay, so we have at least three. We're a quorum. Lance is on Zoom. We have to approve the agenda. And looking at it, we got the county attorney. Looks like you're answering some questions. I think some for me. St. Mary's County Board of Elections has some questions they're going to answer some questions. And then more information sharing on maps. We also have IT here. We got more questions for you, and you'll be providing us a lot of the stuff to show on the screen. So does everyone have any questions, changes to the agenda that we're going to go after today?
I just, at some point, I wanted to just take some time to clearly define a couple things and then maybe continue to do that in the beginning of meetings moving forward, especially when we get in front of the public. I want them to clearly state and define and socialize our directive and the objective parameters that we used and took into consideration in the drafting of our maps.
Do you want to lay out what our rules were or what our goals were given to go after? Okay, that's fine. Paul, anything? Lance, anything to? So do I hear a motion to approve the agenda as stated?
I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Do I hear a second?
I second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Lance, did you say anything?
He's on mute, but
I can't hear him. Ayes have it, motion carries. There's no nays that I can tell. We have 2 minutes to go over and approve. One was from the last meeting, and there was the other one that we didn't get to because they were too busy with county commissioner stuff. So one was on the 28th of September, other one was the 29th. They're in your packet. I've gone over them. They look fine, at least content and times. Does anyone have any changes, comments to the minutes?
I'd like to move to approve the minutes of both September 28th and the 29th.
Do I hear a second to approve the minutes, both minutes?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those, I see Lance gave me a thumb. I'll take that as a yes. Okay. So the ayes have it. There's no nays, so the motion carries. Okay, so we got the minutes, we got the agenda, and let's start with the agenda. So Matt, you wanted to start off with something a little bit different for this meeting.
Right, and
Maybe kind of like when we go out in the public.
So I'm just going to pose that we just make this common practice, because especially when we get in front of the public, and because obviously this is being recorded, to just make sure that we defined some of the directives that were laid in front of us, the criteria that we've been operating off of, because I think one that'll add value for people that are watching on YouTube, and then certainly when we sit in front of the public, should they choose to attend, I think it's important that they understand everything. So just a couple notes. So, I'd like to start by clearly defining and socializing the public our initial directive, clearly define and socialize the data we were given to meet the directive, clearly define and socialize additional objective considerations utilized to finalize drafts, and then clearly articulate this draft as a 90% solution or a minimal viable product intentionally left as a draft to allow for public insight and input prior to finalization.
Okay.
And then I've got a list of some of the objective considerations.
The 10% target for population, according to the lawyers. And of course, we're also trying to make the other data, so they normally do jive. Once you get the population, the other stuff normally goes along too. The voters greater than 18 and the registered voters. That's fine. Let them know at least what we were given to attack.
And for the first portion, it's all accounted for in 26-2 of Article 19. That was the initial directive, and then the advice that we obtained that 10% threshold. So, and then utilizing the census data set that exists today and not trying to take into account any future growth or decline in population.
Correct. We only can use with what we have.
And I think that's just an important thing for us to say at the beginning of these, especially starting next week.
That's fine. I'm sure people may bring that up, but we have to basically say we have what we have, and we can't look down the future at what may be anticipated. But anyway, if that's it, then we'll go into our agenda. Looks like we have county attorney. Guess you're going to be answering some questions.
I see on the agenda they allotted me 5 minutes. If I make it under that, it will be a
You're
first.
fine. You're fine. We got time.
First off, I'm here to respond to 2 questions that were posed to the county attorney's office by Dr. Richardson. Mr. Johnson, I had one additional question from you that I picked up on, which I have an answer for as well. If there were additional ones, the one I'm thinking of was whether county commissioners and school board district members are required to be registered voters. I do have an answer from that one that I was able to look up and verify.
I don't think that was my question, though.
Okay. That might have been
You can answer it
somewhat-
anyway.
Mr. Thompson, pardon me then. Anything else you can pitch to me, I'll hit it as best I can. If
Okay.
not, we'll take a mulligan report in next week. Dr. Richardson, you asked whether, in looking at total population, if we make the number of proposed districts line up to be within 10% so that no more district deviates from another district by a threshold greater than 10% of population, does it matter if we start looking at other metrics of population? So if we're within 10% on total population, is it a death knell or is it a problem if, say, population as measured by the number of eligible voters or population as rendered by or determined by the number of total registered voters is out of sync on that 10%? The short answer to that is that it does not matter in most of the legal jurisprudence that I'm looking at. The longer answer is that the reason it doesn't matter is because population, what matters there is how we define population, whether it's total population, whether it's population meaning registered voters, whether it's population as adults over the 18 who could be eligible to vote. Once you decide upon a definition of population, whatever that might be, if it's a completely different metric, it might be. But once you decide upon a definition of population, that number is what you're aiming for to be within 10%, whatever you define population as. And to sit back and in reading comments again, to go back to what was said in the beginning, 10% is a goal. The significance of that is that in the body of case law that's developed both nationwide, Supreme Court cases, looking at redistricting on a congressional level, and here in Maryland, looking at our state's allocation of congressional districts. And finally, I found a case responsive to county-level redistricting. We look at 10% because that, for whatever reason, is just the number that has emerged over the last 3-4 decades as the tipping point. If you keep it within 10%, if this plan is challenged upon the basis of population inequality, it will be presumed to be a valid plan if the variation is within 10%. Over 10%, that's not an automatic death sentence. It just means there's a presumption against it. If there is a compelling, rational state interest for going above the 10%, maybe it could be upheld. Haven't found a case where it has been. I would strongly encourage this board to stay under 10%, but I put the information out there for the board to consider. That being said, keeping it under 10% is not necessarily make this immune to lawsuits. You still have to, in allocating within the 10% margins, to avoid the terms of art are arbitrary and capricious decisions, that there should still be a rationale and a basis for drawing the district lines as they are. That can be respecting natural, by natural I mean as lines would fall on a map where it makes sense. For example, looking at a road or the confines of a subdivision. Natural boundaries, respecting existing political subdivisions, which there aren't many political subdivisions smaller than county commissioner districts we could go to. The most you could look at there are election districts, or preserving communities of interest, which would be the non-necessarily defined but still cognizable communities, such as a subdivision or a housing development, where residents may have similar, or one assumes, similar goals to one another. Those are all the kinds of basis or the kind of things that the court, or that when these plans are challenged, courts will look at and determine or see if these things were followed so as to explain any differences in population. That's particularly relevant if we are staying under 10%, but not exactly at 10%. If there's that difference where one district is 4.99% above and another is 4.99% below. On the face, it's good, but if it was a tortured process to get there, it could be challenged in court, even though it's within the right limits. Of course, I left out one of the most important, obvious reasons for all changing populations at all, and that's to create a district that is compact geographically and contiguous. But I think everybody knew and assumed that already. Professor Richardson, the second question was whether you are correct that your task is to use the current data and not to look or speculate as to what future possibilities regarding county growth and what population may be in the next. And the answer to that is that I could not find a case where a rationale was ever put forth that we are justifying a population discrepancy because we believe the population may change within the next 10 years. I could not find a case where that ever led a redistricting board. That obviously means I never found an instance where the court upheld that sort of reasoning. Sitting back and applying kind of an analysis as best I can with the case law that I have, it is safest if the board does not speculate on things like that. Just because a development is planned, just because our common sense tells us the growth may be located in one section compared to another, that is probably not the safest grounds to go out and deviate from the population variances on. If it is something that could come up, and again, obviously we know that there are some parts of the county that we expect to grow at a faster clip than others, but whether that would pass the basis, if challenged, of a rational state reason to vary from the population or equal population requirements, I think that is speculative rate of success at best if I had to defend that one down the road. And then lastly, Mr. Thompson, your question of whether county commissioner districts and school board district members have to be registered voters. Yes, they do.
Okay.
That's the simplest answer I think I will ever give. If there are any other questions? Yes.
So while you're there, so you don't have to walk back and forth, so I mapped out, I stated that there were some other objective things that were taken into consideration other than the immediate directive that we were provided. So while you're here, if you wouldn't mind, and I'm not going to hold you to it if you need to go and research, but I'm interested to see if, in your eyes, if you would classify these as fair and reasonable considerations. And I can send you a copy. So utilize natural boundaries such as roads, legal subdivisions, and bodies of water for ease of communicating and displaying districts. Extend abutting district relationships to include 3 and 4 for ease of fairness and future redistricting requirements should they occur. Obtain as close to absolute equal distribution as possible to allow for future district fluctuation whilst remaining in the 10% deviation parameters. What I mean by that is the closer we get to 0, the longer we stay within that 10% requirement beyond the body of this board. And then minimize changes to existing districts to the best of our ability.
So what I'll set back and say to kind of frame these all as the questions of which of these, what you're trying to have a court at the end of the day, hopefully describe any of these are as a rational basis. Is there some, and that is a very low test in the legal world in terms of challenging actions. If there is some way that this makes sense, that isn't divorced from reality and can render and benefit, tangible or intangible, to the county that we all serve, you are probably going to have it upheld in the court if it's only challenged on that basis. Going through these one by one, natural boundaries, part and parcel, those come up in every redistricting case that I've looked at. Those are textbook examples of the kinds of existing features that a redistricting committee can take account of, and if population varies to support that, those have been upheld in the past. That's an easy one. Abutting districts, which as I understood was, put another way, did I have it right that we're thinking, is it a rational reason that district number 4 should come into physical contact with district number 3?
Correct.
That to me, and gut opinion, I can't find an example off the top of my head. I doubt I would find something that goes with that much granularity. You can look at a map and it is a little cognitive dissonance to see the districts as they are numbered right now, but to change district lines to change voters' lives, things like that, as minor a change as that might be in some ways, if it's just to make numbers line up in sequence with each other, that is probably going to, my bet, fall more on the side of arbitrary and capricious than it does on the other ones. But it's not without some merit, and it is a low bar. But I don't think, in my opinion, from my analysis of the case law, that if that were the only thing we had to stand on, that we could sustain a change just for that reason. Now, that also requires someone to have been aggrieved by the decision. That requires them to bring standing. That in itself may be unlikely, but that reason does not have the heft, in my opinion, of the other ones. The other two reasons, equalizing the population to come as close to near zero as possible and minimizing the changes to the current lines as they are to preserve, I guess one might say, the communities, or at least the sense of wholeness that these districts may have attained in the last 10 years of being identifiable political subunits of their own. Those, I think, you can see the benefits of those, and that is something I think for this board to, and that is by no means an endorsement, and let me speak a little bit longer at that, but one can argue the benefits of that and can say that there is a reason to take those factors into account and think about the benefits and the disadvantages that assigning value to those considerations may have. And I think there are fair arguments that one can make on both sides of those issues. But because I think there are fair arguments to say on that one, there are reasons one can point to that and say this is a factor that we should consider and respect. And likewise, there are reasons we can say that those factors may not matter as much as other ones, which we may care to mind or bring to mind or debate here. Because we can have a good faith debate over their merits, I believe those are things that would hold up under the scrutiny that I would expect courts would subject this plan to if it is ever challenged. Again, so long as this board arrives at a rationale that is tied to some kind of benefit, or there's a rationale that it can that supports its decisions, and its use of this factor is something that guided its decisions.
Can I ask a follow-up question? Go ahead.
For whatever he sends you, I guess you're going to officially, Matt, you're going to send him officially your questions? I know we got it all in video and audio now.
Yeah, but I'll follow the.
Then the lawyer, John, you'll answer it in addition to what you just said right now, basically written down for another record. And Pat, you had another
I
question.
just wanted to follow up. Mr. Hauser, you mentioned natural boundaries, equalizing population, and minimizing changes as three solid bases for making these decisions. Do any of them take priority?
I would say, I'm going to give you a very lawyerly answer, which is those, in terms of from a lawyer's standpoint, I think could all be valid reasons. The priority that this board wants to afford them and how it ranks them in their own is a decision that this board, in its discretion, can be called upon and use its own. If this board's decision arrives that one of these does not have as much heft as the other, I believe that's perfectly valid for you to do. There is no one of these factors that, in my analysis of the case law and the jurisprudence, affords it a higher ranking than the others. The only thing I will say is that natural boundaries does appear very often as a decision that's justifying. That's not to say we have to go by it. That's not to say it's a lodestone that intrinsically has more value to it than the others. That is something this board needs to debate and reach its own decision as to the merits. But respecting natural boundaries and the sort of communities that they may naturally form, that shows up in many a case. And there is a wide breadth of case law that's been written supporting decisions where variations in population have been made to respect natural boundaries, and a very close cousin to that is the boundary of other existing political boundaries, such as towns. I suppose election districts, if we could consider an election district as a political unit, but not quite on the same level, I think we all know from matter of common sense, as a town. Those two very frequently appear in support of plans that do not have exactly equal populations among their districts.
Paul, any questions for,
Not this time.
hey, Lance, any questions? He says no. I saw it on the video. I do have a question. Next Tuesday, we have our next meeting, and that's where we're going to vote for whether we go forward with public hearing. Now, is that a fixed date? Because we're still revolving, what we're doing with our maps.
Yes, my understanding is that's a fixed date.
That's a
because
fixed
we
date.
need a decision arrived at that if we're going to have the plan published.
That's all
in-
due for scheduling and.
Right,
okay.
because that, we have to comply with the notice requirements ahead of the public meetings, we need to have a plan arrived at by that date.
Okay, so I got that answer. So anybody else, similar questions? Do you have to go over any more things on your docket?
I have, that's all for me. I know I came over 5 minutes. It's just
We're not
more for my mother to watch
not
tonight
counting
when
right
I get
now.
home, but
Okay.
I'm here if you have any other questions for me.
And you'll
And I
send your
will,
questions to John, he'll put them in print.
Right.
You still do print, right?
Bind myself to my answers even
There you go.
more.
I've been recorded.
Thank you very much.
All right, thanks, John. It's like the Board of Elections next. You had more questions to answer?
I've got all of it. Mr. Johnson's, I don't have because he's not here. And Mr. Thompson, I think, still has. Did you put yours over here, Mr. Thompson?
No, I still
You
have it.
There, okay.
Good evening, everyone.
Okay,
So I do have several questions from each of you, well, some of you, and I'm going to go ahead and go over those questions that we have. First are from Dr. Richardson. One of the questions was, what are the ramifications of moving a precinct or a census block to another district? There is no ramification for us because you're not moving election districts. You're only moving lines for representation. So voters are going to go to where they vote now, regardless of what lines that you all draw. Okay, that's not going to change for them. Okay? The second question I believe I have from Dr. Richardson, it's a two-part question. This says, the first is the Board of Elections provides several different options for voting by mail, vote at the early voting sites, and in-person voting at the individual's assigned polling place on election day. Is each polling place only allowed to use one ballot? If you vote at an early voting site, are you given the appropriate ballot regardless of where you live in the county? And I just want to be clear on this. So yes, when you go to an early voting site, whatever early voting site you go to, we have all ballot styles there. So anybody can go to any different early voting site and you'll receive the correct ballot style at that location. If you go on election day, you have to go to your assigned polling location because that's the only ballot styles that we have at that location. So if a voter goes to the incorrect polling location, they'll be given two options. They'll be given the first option of leaving to go to the correct location, so their whole ballot will be counted in full, or they can stay at that incorrect location and receive a provisional ballot. And the provisional ballot is an understanding of, we'll do the research. If your entire ballot will be counted, it will be counted, but if it's not, you are at the wrong location, which has the incorrect legislation district, then it'll only be counted in part. Okay, and that is done by our board through a canvass process. Okay? And the second part of the question was, our committee had some discussion in a previous meeting on Chestnut Ridge Drive and Chestnut Hill. They are close, but they are currently in different commissioner districts, as I understand it. Do the individuals in both developments vote at a different polling location if they opt to vote in person on election day? That is one of our areas that we are researching because we believe it should be in the same district. So we're working with the Maryland Department of Planning right now to find out guidance of where the lines are. Some of these developments grow so fast and so large that they run into another district. So we have to redo our lines to include that growth so it can be in one district. So we're working on that one right now, if you're talking about the Chestnut Hill
Yes,
development.
yes.
Okay? We have the same problem in Wildwood. Wildwood is growing so fast that it's coming into Leonardtown, so we have two different election districts in Wildwood. We have the 3rd and the 8th. So we have a very fine line of where we have to draw our lines and keep it straight. And then I think that was all of your questions. Then I had a question from Mr. Johnson about the party definitions.
so the
What
algorithm,
is-
Okay, yeah, correct.
Okay, sorry. What is WDP, BAR, UNA, and others? So WDP is called the Working Class Party. BAR is the Bread and Roses Party. UNA stands for unaffiliated, and others are all other parties that are not recognized in Maryland, whether it's constitutional, all the other parties that, there's several of them out there. So the only ones that are recognized are the ones that petition to the state to be an official recognized party for Maryland.
Okay.
So I think that was that one. And then I have one for Mr. Thompson. Can a county level redistricting cause a change of voters' polling location? No.
Right.
No, you can't change it. The only way it gets changed is by us in the office or congressional or legislation redistricting, as that's going on now. So those are the only ones that can add and move polling locations. Okay, you all can't. Can a county level redistricting cause new polling places? No. No. So again, you all are just changing representation, not where they go vote. Okay. And then I believe the county attorney answered your question about the county commissioner candidates to be registered voters. Yes, they do have to be registered. And then I also gave CDs. You all
Correct.
wanted a copy of our registration list, so I've given everybody a copy of the CD in Excel format, so you can sort and filter however you want to filter it, but it has all the information on there.
Okay. Yeah, I asked for that CD. It's something you can bounce, it's more data. You can bounce it against the census and see how well the census lines up with that data. So it's another good thing. There was a question I have for IT after this. So anybody have any other questions? Lance, can you hear us? I think he can hear us. He's moving around. Anybody else have any questions for Board of Elections?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Do you have any questions for the Board of Election?
No, no.
Okay. Okay. Paul's good.
I'm
So-
good. Thank you.
So thank you for answering our questions and giving us the CD. We're good.
Okay, thank you.
You can go home and eat dinner, like me. Information sharing, so Eric, you gonna, I guess, put up that data comparison for the different maps? Is what you had? Here you go. So our last meeting, we agreed to look at both Lance and Matt's map. And if you look at the numbers, you can see there's a big population impact. Lance, you won, 32,616. And Matt, you were second, 15,141. Then you can look at the numbers. But anyway, I think these maps are still being adjusted. I guess that's one of the other things we have to look at, the selling point, how many people are also going to impact too. So I think one of the things, Matt, I was looking at, we took Wildwood out of 4. You may want to see what happens, and I'll play with it too, see what the numbers of your map with Wildwood back and 4. Because your numbers were like pretty well, and you've already said that, way below 10%. So you still have some wiggle room to see what the numbers do.
So I'm going to leave my draft, I'm going to stand behind the draft. that
Okay, then anybody else can do some editing to see what other numbers we get.
I also humbly state, if we put Wildwood back in 4, it's going to look like my map. It's
well,
that's sort of how that shakes out. There's enough people in Wildwood. You have to.
Well, I know, I've been looking at a while, and that's something from IT. Now, when you did all this data analysis, you were able to, I guess, grab all the changes that we did on our maps to figure out what the total impact was. So if you have like a section in the map that you want to move around, so currently the way the software works, you have like, there's like 3 dots in there where you can bring down, it basically shows the same data that's already being displayed in that little square. It gives you total population greater than 18 and registered voters. It just shows it again, that total. Is there any way to grab like street data? In order to use this data, I need to have some reference to it, of that area. Is there any way to grab that in an area? So if you had, let's say you grab one little area, right? And you got all that data, is there anywhere to also display all the street content of that grab?
So for.
In a spreadsheet like that, you could use that data, you could copy it, put it in Excel, and bounce it against where this stuff is.
Let me,
It's either that or doing it by hand. Hand is very laborious.
so let me see if I am understanding you correctly. So if you're saying, for instance, if you wanted to look at, let's say this
Sure.
census block here,
Right.
to be able to, and so within that block, you want to be able to see what exactly?
Roads, the road names.
The road names.
Because there's going to be a column in here with a street number, with a street address, and it has a road. So in order to use this data to the best, other than doing it by hand, I can go in there, look at the map, and write down all the roads in there, and Wildwood is a nightmare. But I've done it. I got a big book full of road names. But to auto-calculate and auto-filter, it'd be nicer to already have that in magnetic media, already all those names. And all it is a match against that database here. It's a lot quicker by hand, or instead of doing it by hand.
And so the goal of that would be able to see exactly who is in that block?
Well, you're going to have all the registered voters that are in that block with this data. But I need to get the roads in order to do the best match possible. For example,
So, the registered voter numbers came from that database. I can provide that within this map where you click on a block and you can see, and you would then raise this attribute table, and you could see the specific list of voters with names, if that's what you're looking for. What's been put on the CD for you is what populated this map.
well, how did you get to that section?
There's no,
There's a little down arrow.
this at the. Sorry, we have multiple multiple maps open, so it's making it look. Let me remove this map. So what you, this right now is just the tabular version of what you're looking at. It has, this
Right.
is the block ID, census block ID, and then here's your population
Yeah.
18 registered voters for that block, which
Right,
district,
that's
which precinct,
the
all
normal
of
stuff that you do when you
But
do
it,
that little-
at the moment, it does not have, you can't click on that block and see that list of 67 registered voters with names. That's what's on the CD.
Is there
that
any
you
way to get the
received.
streets? Here. The street names? Other than looking in there and writing them down by hand?
I could. I'm not sure. I haven't tried to do that within this software where it would then go and pull the streets. It might be difficult because, for instance, St. John's Road, is that, only the odd numbered addresses fall on in this block, and the even addresses fall on this block. So how do you, that's getting down to a very, that's, so what, I'm trying to find out what knowing the streets, what's your end that you're trying to?
My end
'cause I
is,
may be able to give you
this
that
data
without-
here that we just have has a street name.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to compare this data to the map data, you would need the street name. Now, you can do an auto filter all the data on that Excel file, but in order to filter out the area that you're looking at, you have to basically auto filter on the street name.
So
Now,
you want the map to give you, say, the 3 street
You
names in that
can do
block?
that manually by looking down there and copying down all the roads that are there, and manually by hand,
Yeah.
going in there and clicking this one off, or do all off and then click the ones that apply to that area. But it would be a lot easier and faster, particularly in Wildwood, if I had all the streets, in a magnetic media, like an Excel, like on the bottom, with them listed. And then I could easily put that in another tab of Excel and just basically do a VLOOKUP or flag it for each ones that match from that sourced area that we're looking at. Do you see what I'm talking about?
With the goal being, you want to see on that Excel that, say, there's 32 voters on street A and 16 on B and whatever.
I want to see everything in that area.
Make
I want
sure
to see
that the
everything in that
number
area. So I want
match.
to bounce this data, and you say it's from the same, that's good, but I want to verify.
Okay, I mean, there's going to be some, correct me if I'm wrong, the Excel, you're going to have hundreds and hundreds of cases where a street crosses census blocks.
Sure.
And the Excel isn't going to,
I understand that.
by block. So
I understand it,
you're
and
not
I've
gonna-
already looked at Wildwood, so you're going to get the bulk of the data by doing that, even though some of them still continue, like FDR, for example, that continues even outside of Wildwood. But you could still narrow down the data once you start seeing these stray guys that go outside.
I can try, I mean, I can even, if you would prefer, I can simply give you a static list of every census block and every road in census. You don't even have to use the map. I can just give you an Excel that has this
Okay.
census block code and then lists every road that falls within.
That would be
census.
fine too, so
That would be easier than trying to make it dynamic. I can just
Okay.
give you a one-time.
just give me the
export.
block name and I'll just pull it up and
Okay.
for areas of
Yeah.
concern. Okay, we made it easy, so you already have it, so you know you can get it to us.
Yes, that's easy to do, to just give
Okay.
you that one-time
All right.
list of roads by block.
Okay, so we're all in agreement. So I encourage everyone to use this. It has a lot of good data in it to do some analysis. Looks like we're still doing sharing maps. You like your map? I'm going to still look at what Matt did and do some editing, because that's what we're here to do. Lance, any questions? I'll probably even look at Lance's
Yeah,
map too.
I still plan on probably doing another draft of mine.
That's fine. I mean,
'cause
it was the first attack, so,
Yep.
but maybe we can.
See if I can if I can do something with that. It's not quite as, because that's a lot of people.
Well, you did win the contest. You won the contest.
I did win the most. I do.
That's right.
I appreciate that, but I know that's not exactly necessarily what we're looking to do either. So,
Right.
But yeah, that was my first draft.
Okay, that's fine. Any other business to go over?
Just another question for Eric. I first was able to get back in using the workaround that you had, and then the next time I tried to get in, I couldn't get in. What I want to do is go back to my map and make some changes. So even if it requires resetting everything, clearing it, having me start from scratch, I would prefer that to
Okay.
trying to go through the workaround. So can you reset my map?
I can reset the map. It's still, I've talked with some help support and still not sure why it's requiring that second login. So even if I reset your map, you'll still have to do the double login process for now. I'm still hoping to eliminate that portion.
Okay.
But, and if you're able during business hours to give me a call, I'd be happy to even,
Okay.
walk through and make sure that, and try to get you in and connected, so.
All right, good.
So I also did update my map. Are you seeing those changes? They're not in the current combined map.
They would be, yeah, in your personal, I can
Right.
pull that up if you'd like.
We don't need to. I just,
Okay.
it'd be nice to get it in for next time.
Oh, so I can export, if you have created essentially a second version that you would like to be able to share, I can export that and add
Okay.
that to the shared versions.
Just notify you when it's ready. You're not watching it every day.
No, I am not. I do not pay attention to when you make edits.
Okay. Lance, any questions?
No, I don't have any questions now.
Okay, I think we've exhausted everything we're going to be talking about. We have another meeting Tuesday. We're supposed to come to a vote to go forward with the public forum to show them what we got. So do I hear a motion to adjourn the,
Prior to that, so next
Back it up
meeting,
now.
we are agreeing to the map next meeting, which we don't.
we're going to, I guess, come to a conclusion on maybe one or two maps, and then ask for the people we're going to take input from
Okay.
people. So, we don't vote, we're not voting yet on the map. We're voting to go forward to share with the public and take their input too.
I realize it's not the final vote, but we're going to have one map when we go to the public.
Not necessarily. We could be we both are looking at Lance and Matt's map.
And I'm really still not comfortable with that because I'm still going back to the impact, how many people are going to be impacted. and I'm really not ready to support 15,000 or.
Well, I know, that's why I mentioned I was going to also look at editing Matt's map, see what we can do about it. I mentioned Wildwood, that's a lot of people.
And while I really liked how Matt was able to get the numbers almost perfect, I have concerns about how far up to Oakville he would need to go in order to get those numbers perfectly.
Okay. So should we?
So I think we, at the next meeting, should look at all
All five?
5 maps, yeah, and maybe one at a time, rule in or out, and
Okay.
narrow it down.
Did you hear that, Lance?
Yeah, yes, I did hear that.
Okay, so I guess that's going to be the plan for Tuesday. Going to look at all 5. You want to do a vote on that, look at all 5, or? We can vote.
We need to bring them all back.
We can bring them
so
all back.
I move that on Tuesday, at the beginning of the meeting, we bring all the maps back, we look at each one again, and discuss pros and cons.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? No opposed, motion carries. We're going to look at all 5 on Tuesday. Hopefully with, I guess, Lance, you're going to work on yours some more, your map,
Yes, yes.
okay? So,
I do favor picking one by the end of next meeting, though. We can talk about that next, we can think
talk
about it,
about
talk about it next meeting, but,
it's a good target to talk about pin down one map.
I will say that, the 3 of us have, Ms. Richardson, Matt Berg, and I we have similar maps. There's only some minor changes. It's major group areas, but the differences are kind of
I think
negotiable or
those objective
understandable.
considerations, the prioritization of objective considerations are just change a little bit, the way that we prioritize that.
Right.
So once I get this list out to council, we get a formal response back, maybe that'll aid us in establishing a collectively amenable prioritization of objective considerations that will help finalize one single map, because I'll certainly bring it to a vote that I don't want to go to a public forum with 3 drafts. I don't think that's a good look for the board. So I'll just so we're all clear, I will bring it to a vote tomorrow, or at the next meeting, to present one final map to the public. So I'm right behind you. That's going to be my objective.
Did you want to make that motion now?
Sure. I'd like to make the motion that our objective in finishing up the meeting on Tuesday, October 12th, that we will finalize one draft map to present to the public on those scheduled dates.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Lance, you hear that?
Aye.
Any nays? Ayes carry. So do we have anything else to go over?
No?
Hear a motion to adjourn the meeting? Do I hear a motion?
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Any, no nays? Ayes carry. Motion carries. Meeting over.